1940, they were not accepting men of color into the Royal Air Force. A good friend of mine, Sidney Kennard, whose father was an Englishman and his mother was a West Indian lady, he had a pilot's license because they were wealthy, and he'd got one in America. He actually applied, came to England in 1940 to join the Royal Air Force. A very handsome, light-skinned Guyanese, and they turned him down. But when things got bad, of course, they get turned to the colonies. And I was one of the first 4 from Guyana to volunteer.
When I was 18, I passed to go to America to work on the farm or in the factories. I also took the test for the Royal Air Force, and I passed the test. And my mother said to me, "My son, the mother country is at war. Go and help. If you live, it will be a good thing." So I came and served in the Royal Air Force because at that time, most West Indians thought it was a good thing, and I still think it was a good thing. The mother country was at war, and she could not beat Nazi Germany on her own.
It was about halfway through that I actually joined, because when I asked my other friends what to do, they say, "Oh, I volunteered, and what about Billy? He's volunteered as well. What about Simon? He volunteered as well." So I said, "Oh heck, I'm the odd one out here." So the next day, the first chance I went in and I signed on. I didn't want to be left out, you know. So we all came over because at that age, 18, 19, 20, we felt invincible. Nothing can touch us, you know. We'll come over here and we'll give Hitler the hell.
One day, my daddy's paper was laying about, so I took it and began to read. And I came across his advert that the RAF would be in town, at the town hall, and they're recruiting men for the RAF. So I said, here is my opportunity. So I said to my dad, this is what I've just read in the papers, that the RAF is recruiting men for England to join the RAF. So we had a talk about it, and he said, "Son, if that's what you want, go for it." And I got down there as fast as I could run, and signed the necessary forms and did the necessary tests, and I passed, and then I signed on the dotted line.
In my case, I was going to school then. And then they asked for volunteers to join the Air Force. And a lot of us boys volunteered. Now, I volunteered going by what my father used to say, speak. And say, you see, it sounded excited in those days and so on. And I volunteered with several others. But in the end, only 21 of us were accepted.
Well, just when the war started in 1939-45, we were just out of college and there wasn't much prospective in view. So at the time they were asking for volunteers for the Navy, and I decided to join the Navy. And I did a stint there from 1941 until 1944, and then I transferred to the RAF that were asking for volunteers for the Air Sea Rescue Service.
I was looking for adventure. I've always wanted to travel from a little girl, and I was brought up by my grandfather and my grandmother, and he used to tell me to study hard and travel. So all my school days spent studying and yearning to travel. So when the opportunity came along to join the ATS, although I feared it would be dangerous, I had no hesitation in volunteering.
But a friend of mine that we brought up together, he was working at the Daily Chronicle, at the local newspaper, and he came home in '43 and said to me, the RAF is advertising for people from the colonies to volunteer to go and join and help Britain in the war. And I'm thinking of going, would you come? And because we'd always been together, I thought that was good. If he was going to go and I'd accompany, I'd go. So he brought the application form and we applied to join, to volunteer to go to the Royal Air Force.
This is myself in the Royal Air Force in 1944 in England.
My reason was the reason that was typical of all the reasons anyone would give you, but they're not to tell you the truth, is to get away from Jamaica, go abroad. And that was the basic reason. We first of all thought that anything abroad is better than what we have at home. No job prospect, no money, because when you have a 10 shillings in those days, it was a lot of money. We thought if you come abroad, you have all the opportunities to educate yourself properly, to work big money, so on, and to see the outer world.
June the 1st, 1944, Liverpool. And then from there, we were put on a train to Filey, where we did our initial training. And then after that, after 6 or 7 weeks, we were split up in groups and sent into different parts of England.
Having joined the Royal Air Force, you had to do square bashing, learn to walk up and down and drill and take the civil mentality out of you into military. You're told to go, you go, and you're told to come, you come. I arrived in Filey, which is in Yorkshire, in November, 9th of November, 1944. I trained for square bashing. Then I went to RAF Hawkins near Folkestone. And from there, I learned engineering. Now, the old-time aircrafts, which is propeller-driven, if they stop, you can ring me, man, even today, and we get it going. Not jets. I know nothing about jets. And I was proud to be British, having served with men from Norway to the Sudan. And we felt that we had to work together to survive. Of course, food was rationed. A lot of people don't really realize that. And I have been hungry, not starving, during the war.
First of all, we went to Butlin camps in Filey. This is where we had our initial training, learning about different guns and how to use different ammunitions and different exercise and different drill, combating exercise and all of that, defense exercises and things like that. We spent about another 2 months there, I think it was. We had 2 wings there, as a matter of fact, from the West Indies, and we had to have a certain amount of backup from the Royal Air Force Regiment, who were there to give us certain information about various ornaments and things like that.
A typical day, it depends, we had very different duties. You're on air rescue duty. Sometimes you're on player parts. That's mostly night duties. You got to hurriedly put these things so that the plane, you make a channel for the seaplanes. Actually, we were involved with Sunderland flying boats and Catalinas. That were the 2 planes that we were involved in. And sometimes you have maintenance, that you run a taxi service, carrying the crews aboard the plane, carrying the engineers, and then you have your boat duty now, your rescue. You sit there in the hut waiting for the call.
I was a medical secretary for the 10 years that I was in the army, and I was employed at the British Military Hospital in Up Park Camp, which was good because I got to know practically everybody, because at some time or the other, everybody got ill.
I was working in the treatment room, giving out the patients when treatment, you see, from just like a nurse and a doctor. The doctor sent you, give you the list of things that you should do, and then you have to serve it to the people then when they came in.
I learned to do spray painting for a start. Parachute and dinghy repairs and packing, and other repairs on the boat itself. But that, like say for instance, if a plane is smashed or anything like that, we have to be able to repair the nose or part, whatever part of it is. Try and patch it up as best they can so you can use it again. Well, when I was shot down, of course, it created quite a bit of a stir because, you know, I don't think there were many black airmen in those days, and particularly black officers in the Royal Air Force. And I was in solitary confinement. After I'd been in solitary confinement for about 5 days, I was pulled out in the bright sunshine. A photograph was taken of me. I didn't know for what purpose. At the end of I was shot down in 43. At the end of 44, we were of course, we were aware that the Russians were approaching. We could see refugees fleeing, the German refugees running, going north, south, east, west. As the Russians approached, we knew that soon we could be liberated. But then we were, in January 45, we were suddenly told that we were going to be evacuated, leave the camp. It was in the middle of winter. It was a severe winter. The roads were covered in snow, and, you know, we marched for 5 or 6 days in the snow and stopping off in barns and things like that. It was really tough. And landed up in a place about 60 kilometers southeast of Berlin called Luckenwalde, which is a huge holding camp where thousands of prisoners of all ranks, and it was a really disgusting, flea-ridden, disgusting place with hardly any food. There were no Red Cross passes from. That was when it was terrible. Suddenly, from being this privileged place where we could read music, we had bands, we had sports events, we had a theater. We had everything that you could possibly have except a woman. Okay.
So really,
suddenly you got into a measly place which was filthy, bedridden with bugs, hardly any food, and the bombs were falling all along. We could hear the bombing because we were so close to Dresden, and Dresden, of course, was knocked out, and to Berlin, and we could hear the war happening outside. But we were aware that the two armies were coming together. The Russians were moving in from the east, and the Americans were coming up towards the Elbe. So it was an exciting time, at the same time a difficult time. And then one morning we woke up, and there were no guards. The Germans just disappeared.
They fled?
They fled because they know the Russians were there. And within a few hours, the Russians crashed into the camp.
What about heating in camps? I mean, how did you guys keep warm?
Well, it was cold.
No heat?
No, we didn't have heat. I can't remember heat at all. We would have big old blankets covered in blankets and lice, and I think itching kept you warm. When you lay in bed, you were itching so much. But there are lots of incidents. That part of the war was very horrible. So I can remember telling Kurt a bit about my experiences, and he was, but we never got around to this miserable part. And he was saying, gosh, that was a very privileged life because, our money was still going into the bank, our paychecks.
So when you guys were being transported or just logged, you were walking in the cold, in the snow, no heat, just walking. So walking kept you warm.
walking. And then at night we slept. If we go to a hay barn in a farm, we could bury ourselves in the snow. Some of the guys went and slept with the cows. The cows kept them warm.
And that for 6 or 7 days?
Yeah.
What?
No, on the walk, that was it. And then in the camp, I can't remember, we might have had some burning thing, but it was primitive.
So
but of course, I mean, there are lots of things I could tell. That part of it is full of incident.
Sure.
Because I was once sent out on a foraging party to go and bring back food. And there were like 6 of us in a truck, and we were taken out with a Russian guy going in this van. And we drove into the countryside, and we arrived at a farm, and it was all slushy from the mud still, and you could see dead bodies lying, and you had to walk over dead German and Russian people. And then told the captain, I thought when we said that we were going to go and raid some German shop, that, you know, and steal, but found that we had to that we had to round up cattle. Now, how would I know how to catch a cow? I'll get it into it. Well, that was quite a story.
So
that was a story.
What's what happened?
Well, it's amazing how things happen. The first attempt is that my pilot, who was a Canadian guy, Al Angel, he didn't know anything about it. He got a big piece of wood, approached a cow, hit it on his head, the cow fell down. He took out his penknife, cut his throat, and that was even worse, because a cow is a heavy thing, and to drag a dead cow, poor truck into a truck, that was impossible. But eventually, somebody had the idea, well, why don't we get a halter? So we went to the farmer, reluctantly got a halter, captured the cows, and made a ramp, and caught about 6 or 7 cows, and went into it. But we had to go into the same back of the truck with these cows, and the cows are petrified now. And I can remember sitting right at the end of the truck, and the tail of a cow was waving over my head, and the power was petrified. And suddenly I got a blessing, which was the most disgusting state of affairs. Can you imagine being shot on your head?
At the time, the white Americans, they couldn't realize seeing blacks socializing with white women. That was the most thing, the white women. You see, they just couldn't see it. So they are the ones that used to start a lot of the trouble and the problems. The poor black American, they couldn't do much because they used to come down on them. If they tried to resist, they come down on them like a ton of bricks and lock them up, and they never come out again, and they just push them off to the front. But with us, West Indians, we did put up a bit of resistance. You know, fight in a pub, because it was typical for you to sit down in a pub having a drink with 1 or 2 female companions, and a couple of white Americans come in and says, okay, nigger, get out of here. Well, you know, using that word to West Indian is like putting a red cloth before a bull, you know, and we used to go haywire. But afterwards, they realized, don't mess with these West Indians.
I remember a case in Nottingham where some American servicemen, I think they were from the Rangers, saw a fellow bandit, we call him Pig, with his girlfriend. The girlfriend had blonde hair on her shoulder and all that. And the Texan came and says, you shouldn't be with that girl. And taking away the girl. And I was there. I want you to be. Pig said, no, it's my war, man. Boom! Knock him down. Next one got boom. And that was what it was like, survival. And the people, when the police arrested Pig, went to the station and says, this black man didn't do anything. It is the Americans. Well, they said they can't let him out. So they rang the duty officer, R.A. Hucknall. He came about an hour after, and the witness says it, and they let him out. And this was what happened a lot. The Americans just don't think you should survive in their own environment?
Well, I felt relieved it was ended, and I went up when the war, when the war ended in May 45, I think it was, when they had the V-Day. I went up to outside Buckhouse. We had with all the people there, and Buckhouse and Piccadilly Circus, because everybody used to go there, and we had meet a lot of people. Well, everybody milled around because they were happy then the wars ended. But after the war ended, I didn't know what's going to happen, and because we had the big demobs thing had to put in place, and we don't know how long. But then people started being demobbed.
When the war in Europe ended, the Royal Air Force Command, they panicked, and they decided to send back some of the men back to the West Indies, which was in fact not politically correct. They weren't given a choice. They were just repatriated back to the West Indies.
Well, after 46 November, we went home and got demobbed. But the Jamaican government didn't make any preparation for our return, because the British government thought, well, it was the Jamaican government to look after us, and the Jamaican government thought it was the British responsibility.
I did not want to return to Jamaica because I was doing a course with sanitary engineering by letters. And when I asked the authorities, they said, no, unless you were married to an English girl or a college have accepted you, you have to go back to the colony. I was very disappointed. I went back in November on the SS Almanzora, and after 5 months, I was not happy in Jamaica. Things have changed. In 1944, there was a hurricane blowing down most of the bananas, coconut. That takes about 5 years to get back properly. Secondly, I wanted to finish my studies. In Jamaica, my father worked it out that I was going to be a farmer because I'm the eldest son. I had no intention of doing that in Jamaica because planting banana is not a problem, it's selling them.
After all the parties and the excitement had died down, I realized that I couldn't live there because I had spent 5 years in England and my outlook on life was completely different. I knew I was going to leave, but I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. So I thought I would work. I returned to teaching and started to save for when I would be able to leave.
I went home and I spent until from 47 June until November. And I didn't get work. The work I wanted to do I couldn't get because of personal choice. And I went back to live in Trinidad. And I got a job in Trinidad. I was working in Trinidad. And then the Windrush came in. And the Windrush was offering, this was more like freight passage, because they brought troops back, the same as I went back on a trooper, but they were earmarked to go back empty.
And you understand that I did have a little money. And if I sit around and know what I'm going to do, I'm just going to spend it out. So I decided to come to England.
I had a guy named Barry. He was in the RAF. Then he came home and I met him. And then he went to America. And no sooner I went to America, I come back and we pal up. He was 8 years older than me. My father worked for Bustamante. And when I present my dad with my passport and things like that, that I wanted to come to England, he said, no way. However, he took me to Bustamante. And Bustamante told me that they will be eating food out of the dustbin just now in Britain. And I shouldn't come.
This photograph was taken of me in Jamaica at my home before I left for England in 1947. In 1948, I decided to come back to England when the Windrush arrived in Jamaica. The day I left to the Windrush, my aunt took me to the quay, and I left her on the street crying.
It was a very pleasant journey. Yeah, there were lots of us were ex-servicemen. They moved here and going back, look for jobs and so on and so forth. Some of the boys had made arrangement before with different people they knew over here, and they were going back to work or something like that. And someone just taking a chance.
The Trinidadian, Barbadian, but from Honduras and thing. So I mean, when you went on the boat, see, all you had to do is, I mean, mingle. You find a friend, I mean, and well, coming back, I mean, a lot of the lads, I mean, were in ex-RAF lads, I mean, you knew each other. See, so, yeah.
Well, I board Empire Windrush. It was a great big troop boat. When we reached in the midst of the ocean, we heard that there was a stowaway and everybody trying to see it was who, and all of a sudden we get to find out that it was a woman. And then we eyed her, until afterward everybody, when they found her, everybody tried to put together and pay her fare. And speak up to the captain, not to punish her and so on.
We had a fabulous time coming up. I got a job in the bakery because they said if you want to earn a few shillings extra. And the first night I was in the bakery, I hear, a sound that like somebody want us. So, but it was stowaways. And I pushed my head out and I seen them. And they said they wanted food. I went straight in the bakery. I got a bread. I cut it in half and I went in the kitchen because the kitchen was next door. And I get a tin of corned beef and I gave them.
There was 4 bakers, six bakers from myself. I was a pastry cook. Bearing in mind we were having to feed like 2,000 people going out. There wasn't so many coming back. But 2,000 troops and about 240 crew. I can remember these chaps coming on the ship because it was quite an experience to see all these chaps coming onto our ship because they were all English or Scottish or white boys going off in the army and then bringing the West Indians back, which was quite something. And of course the chaps were lively fellas and they all liked to sing song and a good drink of white rum, and it was quite a jolly occasion.
The Empire Windrush brings to Britain 500 Jamaicans. Many are ex-servicemen who know England. They served this country well. In Jamaica they couldn't find work. Discouraged but full of hope, they sailed for Britain. Citizens of the British Empire coming to the mother country with good intent. Prodded by public opinion, the Colonial Office gives them a more cordial reception than was at first envisaged. Many are to be found jobs. Our reporter asks them what they want to do.
Now, why have you come to England? To seek a job. And what sort of job do you want? Any type, so long as I get a good pay.
Some will go into industry, others intend to rejoin the services.
Now, you're ex-Air Force, aren't you?
Yes.
Are you going back into the Air Force again?
Yes.
Do you know if you'll be accepted?
I think so.
Some plan to return to Jamaica when conditions improve.
I'd like to ask you, please, are you a single man?
I am a single man. Only my mother that is depending on me. and I'm also an ex-serviceman.
Ex-service, RAF, are you?
RAF. I took a course in Scotland in case making, and I'm desirous of going back there to see if I can further, because I like it very much, and I'm trying to help myself and also help my mom.
Their spokesman sings his thanks to Britain.
Now, may I ask you your name?
Lord Kitchener.
Lord Kitchener. Now, I'm told that you are really the king of calypso singers, is that right?
Yes, that's
well, now, will you
true.
sing for us?
Right now.
Yes.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city. You can go to France or America, India, Asia or Australia, but you must come back to London City. Well, believe me, I am speaking broad-mindedly. I am glad to know my mother country. I've been traveling the countries years ago, but this is the place I wanted to know, darling, London. This is the place for me.
It was a cold, foggy day on the Thames. Documentation, of course, before, but by 9, 10 o'clock it was a sunny day.
There was someone come and met us, and they says, well, you have to have a ration book and you have to register it and everything.
At first, Britain welcomed the Sons of the Empire. The Evening Standard sent a plane to greet them as the Windrush sailed up the Channel. They came to Attlee's newly nationalised industries, to a country rebuilding after 6 years of war. Many had served in that war and saw their voyage as a journey home.
It was immediately after the war, and we could not have expected a great lot. We expected to rough it.
On the boat, it was realized that about a third of the men had nowhere to go. And the authorities, although they didn't want us here, thought it was a good idea to send us to Peckham Deep Shelter. Now the reason was that it was used during the war as an air raid shelter. And after the war, some students used it. So they took us in minibuses to Clapham Deep Shelter. I think it was about 232 of us. And from there we did our documentation, and within 1 month, everybody had left the shelter and worked. One of the first men to got a job was Columbus. The man was a painter in Jamaica. And when he went to the place, they said, paint? They said, well, give me a try. They gave the man a try. He got the job, and within 2 weeks, he was out of the shelter. And gradually, we left the shelter. But overall, the host nation, the people, were very helpful, even until today.
When they landed at Tilbury, the civilians, there were a party waiting for them, organized by either the Home Office or some other department. Civilians to come off the boat. They said to me, do you know where you're going? Oh yes, I'm going to my relation in Birmingham. You sure now? You know where you're going? Oh yes, I'm going to Birmingham. Here you are, train ticket to Birmingham, £20. Off you go. You, I'm going to Manchester. Train ticket to Manchester, 20 quid, off you go. Oh, I don't know where I'm going. Oh, well, you stop there then, and I'll tend to you after.
It was difficult to get accommodation. And I remember my brother came here in 1949, the year after, and I had him in Stockwell, and I was from the Air Force on leave, and I went to see him. We went out to our fish and chips, and I was going up back the stairs. The landlord said, no, you can't go up, you don't live there. I said, what? My brother says, my brother, son, that's how it is. You just have a room here, and you have to do exactly what they want. He said, but I tell you what, we should buy our own house. And this was happening all about. And by having difficulty, we had to club together and buy our own house. All right, we have an empty house, no furniture, no anything. But you could get second-hand furniture. And most of the traders, if you keep your nose clean, would let you have pillowcase, blankets and all that, and you pay weekly. And today, most West Indians by 1982, especially Jamaicans, own more property than the host nation, because in those days, the host nation lived in a corporation house or in a council house. It's only of late they think of buying their own place, but we had to.
So the civilians were put in private accommodation. They didn't stay there for long. 2 or 3 weeks, the longest, and they were all out because they didn't want to linger. You know, they found themselves jobs and accommodation.
I was there for about 2 weeks, I think, because it's a extremely deep place, you know, because it was when the northern line running in the morning wake us up because we was below the train line. That wake us up, and then we used to come out in the day and go in the park, and then we used to walk from there down to Clapham Common.
That picture was taken while I was off guard, actually. I didn't realize that it was a photographer from the Evening Standard who took that picture. And I didn't realize I was on camera.
I was there, and a Guyanese boy living up the road in Ballum came and met me, another ex-Air Force type. He said, "Oh, Harry, come on. You don't have to stay there." So I said, "Where I go?" He said, "Nan," he called his landlady, he called her Nan. "Nan has got a room, I'm certain she'll let you have it. Come with me and I'll introduce." So he took me up and I met Nan. And Nan says, "Yes, there's a basement room there you can have."
For a period, we used to sleep, 3 of us, you know, moving around together. And we used to sleep on the tube, get the last tube. And end of the line, some of the tube men that were ex-servicemen used to have pity and lend us blankets and all that. And that's the way we used to survive. And we used to come back in town and walk around in town looking jobs.
Most of the houses, 1 in 10 houses in Southwark have a bath in 1950s or so. So you have the public baths, that's why you have Camberwell baths and Brixton bath and all that. And on a Friday evening, you normally go to the bath and you queue for about an hour, half an hour, for 20 minutes. And if you stay longer than 20 minutes, there's a knock on the door. And the people who did not go to the bath, you have a washpan at the back of the house. You put some water there in your room. You use the washpan in between, and you have a bath. But in my case, I find going to the public bath was not a bad thing.
We sleep together, you know, and the bathroom, there wasn't a bathroom, there was only a lavatory and a kitchen. So when you wanted a wash, you'd have to go in the kitchen and get a wash. But there was public baths. There were public baths. So if you didn't want to go to the public bath and it was convenient for you to have a wash in the kitchen, the landlady is out or so, you get your wash.
I'm an estate agent. How would you like it if a house next door to you was taken by a coloured person and became filled to bursting point with all his relations and his friends and so on and so forth?
It was difficult to get a house. I remember seeing a house for sale, 9 Sears Street. We went to the bank. The bank says, "No, you haven't got a bank account." I said, "I've got a post office account." They said, "Anyway, we can't lend you the money." And this was happening all over. I was in the Air Force. I took the letter to the seller. He said, "To think that you have served in the Air Force, you're in the Royal Air Force now, and you have got the deposit." And they wouldn't. "We will lend you the mortgage." They lent us the mortgage for 10 years. We paid it off in 5.
In those days, there was a lot of discrimination. People don't want to accept you. And many doors have been slammed in my face, you know, looking for rooms and all those kind of things.
Most of the jobs that were offered to us as returning from the West Indies, or from Jamaica, I should say, was the most menial jobs. I remember going for a job at a bed and breakfast place as a dishwasher. And after the lady interviewed me, she called her husband upstairs and said, "Do you want any darkies working here?" His reply was, "No." I came out of that place crying. I could not realize that people could be so disgusting that an ordinary job as washing dishes was refused. During the war, we came here to help. After the war, their attitude was that we came here to take their jobs and things away, if not their wives.
The general consensus was they were only suited for the broom and menial jobs. So everywhere we saw a vacancy and went there, they said, "Sorry, we haven't anything but a cleaning job or something to do with the broom."
I had a straight to Leeds. Yeah, I didn't stop in London.
Because you had friends in Leeds now?
Oh,
at
yeah.
the time.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I thought I had it. Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. Came up, and people who I knew, I was sorry. Yeah.
Black guys or what?
White. There were no black people. Yeah. I was sorry, Things change, No, you're not in the RF anymore, See? Yeah.
So what did you do?
Well, eventually did find a place, the four of us in a room. And, we struggled a bit.
So four black guys in one room because you both struggling to get a place
well, nobody let the place. Nobody let the place.
What part of Leeds was that? Was that out in the city?
Round the Hyde Park. Well, it was around the Hyde Park here, around the shop town here. Nobody would. Yeah?
So you'd go for a place, and what would they tell you?
People just open the door and look and just shut the door. Yeah? Well, people who I knew when I was here, go see them and look, sorry. The neighbors, look up, they know me. Oh, no, you're not in the RF anymore. See?
Edric Connor, he got a contract to make West Indian records because they discovered that they hadn't any traditional West Indian songs on record. And Edric Connor, who was a big star at the time, they got in contact with him, and he heard about this group that was about, and he contacted us, and that was the group that made his record. We back him for the recording. The recording was such a success that he said, "Well, we have to get together as a professional group," which he did, and that was the birth of the Southlanders.
When I landed in this country, I had £5 in my pocket. We landed at Tilbury, and I says, "Here we are. No, we haven't got any plan, and we didn't know where we were going to go." I said, "Well, Cardiff don't seem such a bad place. We used to go there. We might get a place. A lot of cement is better than walking at the street." So we jump on it. Of course, he had his wife to think of. I said, "All right, then I jump on the train now and came to Cardiff." So that was how I come to end up in Cardiff. And I haven't lived anywhere else.
Normally to get into chambers you need some financial assistance, and that wasn't forthcoming. But then trying to looking in the newspapers to see if there are jobs available for people with legal qualifications, because businesses are starting up, they must need lawyers. I applied right, left and center. Even I replied because in every application you had to say place of birth. In that kind of period, I heard about the possibility. Somebody says, "Why don't you go into the theatre?" Earl Cameron was playing in a play called 13 Death Street, Harlem, a terrible play which led the Moss and Bayer tours twice nightly. He went into the first film he made, The Pool of London, and he left the part, and I auditioned, and I was offered the part straight away because they were happy to have somebody there. And for 1 year I toured in the theatre, playing the lead in a play, but twice nightly you learn about the theatre. You know, you learn how to walk on the field, how to use your voice and things like that. And it was touring around. So even if you made a boob in one town, it was not so bad. But then the year I knew my craft. I knew how to speak, how to move, and you know, whatever. And I applied. From that, I applied to join the Laurence Olivier Festival of Britain Company.
But I thought if I had a stable job, I would help myself and help my fellow. Applied to join the police, got the application form. This day I went to New Scotland Yard for the test. Took the test and I was surprised. I passed the test. Took the medical, I passed the medical. You have to go before a selection panel, which is about 6 chief officers and superintendent, whatever it is. And they asked me why I want to join. I said, well, I was in the Royal Air Force. I want a job. They said, well, you're a carpenter, because I went and learned carpentry as well. They says, you just want the job for easy. I said, no, I want a job for a career. They said they will send and let me know. 4 days or so after I got the letter, they are very sorry. I could not join the Metropolitan Police. I was disappointed. I lived that in 1983, the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police asked Sam King with a gold chain around his neck to get black people to join the police.
My first job was as a spray painter at a garage nearby where I was living. I bought that house. And but it didn't last for more than a week. And then I got another job as a plastic molder, making telephones. That was a day and night job, 12 hours day, 12 hours night. And then afterward, I left there and I went to work in the industrial estate in Trafford Park as a storekeeper. And then I left that job as a storekeeper and I joined the railways. And then in those days you could leave a job at 1 o'clock and get one at 3. You could pick your jobs. I left the railways after about 18 months and I went to the post office where I took root for 30 years.
On the weekends, we go to the West End, clubs and all that. And during the week, we are at work, you know. But when it comes to Saturday evening, everybody put on their best clothes and you go in the West End and clubbing and dancing. As I said, the Paramount was one of the most important dancing places for us. They always have what you call jitterbug dancing, you know, and the English girls, they never know much about it, so they like to dance with the black people, black men, to teach them how to dance jitterbug, you know.
They couldn't realize seeing blacks socializing with white women. That was the most thing, the white women. You see, they just couldn't see it. So they are the ones that used to start a lot of the trouble and the problems.
He danced with this girl, and the sailor come up and, you know, grab her, jerk them, and he said, "You just turn it, you can," and the lad just turned on, and the tie just drop off. The guy just slashed at him with a razor. Luckily, I had a big knot. See? And the time, he nearly passed out, the lad. See? And all the boy was just grab the girl and, see? Well, the following night, the girl came back and said, you know, they finished.
A girl who went out with a black man in those days were abused with that. But they were genuine, and many, I would say 90% of those people are married today, like Philpotts. There is that build-up of "we don't want you," and "we don't want you in Notting Hill." And that, the Teddy Boys, not the host nation, maybe just 5% thought they could beat us back to the boats. We, as ex-servicemen, had no intention of running from Hitler, less more Teddy Wars.
The housing was terrible, you know, right all around the Stanford, around the area, like you could see the big notice them up the Clapton there, and all over the Amherst Park. Sorry, no colors, no children, and no dogs. So housing was terrible, you know. When we came here, me and the wife always work a flankers. For she always go first and ask for place. And so what your husband does? Say, well, at that time it was I was mechanic. Huh? Yeah. Oh, he works as a mechanic and so on. So, oh, that's all right. Well, then she already arranged for the house and what have you and pay down and all that. So they couldn't say no again, you know. So when I turned up, it was. I was surprised, but some of them was surprised, but I didn't show it, like, you know, I didn't show it, but I know there wasn't too keen, you know.
I can tell you one instant. I saw the advert, we just got married, and I phoned this lady. She said, yes, come along and see the room. I made myself very clear, but she could know my accent that I'm a foreigner. But she didn't know that I was a black foreigner. She thought I was a white foreigner. That's how I put it. So when I went, she said to come along. I was there dead on time. I rang the bell. And this lady, when she came out, you know, she was sort of frightened when she saw a black man. I said, madam, I was the one who phoned you. I came about the room. Oh, you know, this sugary excuse. Oh, I'm so sorry. If you were here 5 minutes ago, you would have got it. But I said, madam, you told me to come along, so you couldn't get, tell you what time I would be there. And more so, I'm a bit early.
And where was this?
In the Tooting area. So when I said, madam, furthermore, I'm a bit early. But I said, look, I said to her, I said, can you see that telephone booth there? She said, oh, yes. I said, look, madam, that's where I was phoning from. And then I didn't see anyone come to your door. And yet you're going to tell me that. I said, why can't you be truthful? Tell me you don't want. She said, well, to be honest, I don't want any black person. I thought I would upset you if I said, no, not me. It's your place. You please yourself who you want as tenant. But with me, I like the truth.
We wanted to form a start-up cricket club. I'm going back now to 1948, when I came back. We wanted to start a cricket club. We didn't have enough men in Leeds to form a cricket club. But I mean, we went down to Sutcliffe's. Myself and a chap went down to Sutcliffe's. We had arranged for everything, the bat, ball, all the gear. But we want a higher purchase because we didn't have enough money to do it. And the man said, oh yes, there's no problem. I had it all the way, everything done. All I've got to do is go in the day, the Saturday, to collect the gears and pay him so much weekly. And when we went in here, and the man said, oh, I'm sorry, but you can't have it. Why? Why? The boss said, no, you can't trust you people. That was what the man said. The boss said, you can't trust you people. I said, what do you mean can't trust you people? He doesn't know us.
West Indian play cricket, man. How you ask that? Most of us would join a cricket club. In my case, the last cricket match I played, Johnson, who played for Essex as a wicketkeeper, just before, and I opened the batting. Dewes, who played for Cambridge and England, was the umpire. So I had a rough idea, but there's another side to it. Where I come from, Patterson's grandfather, Sampy, taught me cricket. Well, Patrick Patterson was one of the West Indian fast bowlers, so I can blow my trumpet, say I run in good race.
I had my wife with me then. We came over and we went to the Chinese place and we sat down. have a casual drink and so on. The shops came in and wanted us to make fuss all the time. And that's what I did on the first occasion anyway. Myself and a Jamaican chap in, I forgot his name offhand, but we're in Singapore. He had his wife and I had my wife. We went to this place and we had to fight the way out. We had to fight the way out all the time, yeah.
He came and was like making trouble, but what was he accusing you of?
They haven't got to accuse it. If they see you with a if they see you with a in an English woman, even when your wife or not, they don't know if your wife or not. They're very, very prejudiced, stupid, ignorant.
My wife, when the parents knew that we was going out, actually she was pregnant. And her sister, I had a friend that came to me and said they want to put her in a home. So I put on my clothes and I went to her house and I knocked the door and they let me in. And I put my cards on the table. I said, not because I'm black. You may think that I can't take care of your daughter. And as soon as I'm 21, I'm going to marry to her. You know, and I did marry to her at the age of 21.
To be fit and proper to become a GP. So I nominated 3 other fellas who were my seniors. They were all munition workers and they came here before me. So I thought it's proper to nominate them. That was Jackson, Clark and Dalton. To my surprise, they says no, you go. So I couldn't back down. So I took up the mantle and became a JP because they insisted that they don't want it, so I must have it.
Yes, my next door neighbor, he came to me and suggested that asked if I would like to go on the council, the town council. So I said yes, and they came down and they interviewed me, and I was co-opted into the council. Next election, I was elected, and I then became deputy mayor to another Jamaican who was mayor.
I came home one evening. The Labour group says that they're going to make Sam King the mayor. I said, what? Mayor is a long-term job. But as it worked out, the man who should be the mayor that year got drunk at a party, and the South London Press have his picture stumbling all over the place. They want a safe pair of hands. I got home about 10 o'clock, my wife was in bed. I said, May, you know these people are stupid. They say they're going to make me mayor. She looked at me in my face and said, Sam, you're disciplined, you're capable, you could do anything if you have any ambition, but you've got no ambition. I said, well, I have to have a little ambition, you know. A year after, the Labour grouping selected me as a mayor. Now, once the Labour group select you as the mayor, you're there. Because the opposition, we were about 44 out of 62. So the opposition only talked. But give them their due, no one opposed Sam King as the mayor. Because my background was Royal Air Force. My background was with Claudia Jones, God rest her soul. I was responsible for the finance for the first West Indian Carnival. I was a member of the ex-servicemen. So I've done my little bit and I've done my homework.
13-year-old Vince Reid and his adoptive parents found accommodation in King's Cross, and they enrolled him at a secondary modern school there. Vince was the only black pupil at that school, and the other boys tried to bully him.
No, there were attempts at bullying. My first day in the school, some white boy came up and said he's going to beat me up. So, I don't know you. You haven't done anything. It's the first day in school. And he said, you're black, you're a nigger, And so I kicked him down. And, that was the end of that. But there were other attempts at intimidation, but I could fight. And, once they realized I could fight and I wasn't going to back away and run away, because, if you're one, then you're an easy target. But, if you stand up. So my life, from that point of view, it wasn't easy. It wasn't especially unpleasant either, because as I say, I could defend myself. And of course I started to learn, pick up the language, my language skills, and I've been able to gradually drop my Jamaican accent. So by the time I left school, it was pretty difficult to pinpoint me as a Jamaican. Although I can talk Jamaican still.
Vince did not enjoy classes, and the teacher was not interested in his education.
I wasn't learning anything. In fact, I started to play truant. It was boring. The teachers were racist. I remember the English teacher, a guy called Jones. He was reading something from Shakespeare, and it's a common truth that loneliness is young ambition's ladder. That bit where the climber upward turns his face, and once he achieved the topmost rung, he then on the ladder turns his back, scorning the base degrees from which he descend. And this is Brutus's justification for murdering Caesar. And he asked who could explain the meaning of it. And I put my hand up, and of course I had my strong Jamaican accent. And I explained using the social language of Jamaica. And he just laughed like a drain, he just, as if what I was saying was nonsense, He actually literally mocked me. And I remember from that time, he never asked me another question, and I never volunteered I never volunteered anything again, because I felt ashamed. Felt ashamed of my accent. And I was never told whether my interpretation was right or wrong. So I was unsure as to whether what I said made sense. Of course it made perfect sense to me. But when you have a teacher who, behaves in that way, you're not certain if what you're saying is logical and rational and a correct, analysis of the thing, Yeah, so I stopped going to school.
It wasn't until Tom Dowse Jr. was about 16 years of age that he realized the significance of the arrival of the Empire Windrush and the role his father played in the Windrush story.
I've always known that he came here as one of the first civilians after the war. The first time I was aware of exactly when, I would probably be about 16, because it was coming up to the date, because I remember him saying that he left in May 48 and arrived in June the same year. And I said about 16, 17 when I sort of began to realise the significance of it and why he came here. And when he came here, never intended to stay very long. I always remember him saying everything he ever intended to carry in his life was a suitcase. It's the next thing he got married and got children, and all those plans went out the window.
Barry, the last of the 5 sons, born and bred in Derby, first knew about the Windrush story during the 1990s, after he started to work in London. His father told him about his stay at Clapham South Deep Shelter.
He was one of those that had literally nowhere to go. He didn't have any contacts over here or any family, and quite a number of them were put in a deep shelter at Clapham South tube station. Now, unfortunately, he told me his first night there he had his wallet stolen, so it wasn't a great welcome to the mother country, especially as, if I remember correctly, they'd been outside Tilbury for a few days whilst it was debated in Parliament regarding that, and I'd even looked into it, and on the Public Record Office websites you can see the government papers discussing what was going to be done with these few hundred Jamaican immigrants. The local labour exchange had about various jobs, and one that struck him why you'd have to really ask him, was working in the foundry in a town just outside of Derby called Ilkeston, Stanton Staveley, which I don't think exists anymore, but it's a well-known foundry. And he took the job up there. He took the job up there. Why? It just seemed to attract him, and he moved up to Derbyshire pretty much soon afterwards.
But on his arrival in Derbyshire, Tom had some difficulty finding accommodation.
A lady come out, opened the door, and opened the front door, and I says to her, I've seen in the paper, because I've got a telegraph in my hand, I said, I've seen in the paper that you've got lodging here. She says, oh yes, nice lodging, will you come in? And when I went into the hallway and she turned the light on and see I was coloured, she screamed like I was, going to rape her or something like that. She says, oh no, please go, I can't have you, please go. Just like that.
Tom Dowse was a clever businessman.
Dad always had the attitude that if you in a country like England, he says you've got to make sure you serve everybody. So what he said was that obviously Jamaicans would come in because of him being a Jamaican. What he needed to do was to get the English people to come in. So what he would do, we'd put things outside like Daz soap powder and that sort of thing to let them know that we sell what they want. And we also used to have very good trade with the Indians. We used to sell a lot of the spices they used, in Pakistan, because again they would as well.
His wife Iris complimented his drive and determination, but at first her father wasn't keen on the marriage.
There was an initial awkwardness with my granddad. He wasn't too keen on the marriage, but certainly my grandma was. He called her mum from quite early on, and because my mother was under 21, she was the one who signed the consent forms for them to get married. So I would say overall, my granddad, I would say he was just typical rather than anything in particular. It was typical of that time, but he gradually changed his mind about my father. But my grandma certainly was, not somebody who objected too much, which for those days was quite surprising how accepting she was.
Tom and Iris were not just loving couples, they were ideal business partners.
If you think about the period when they first met and they got married and as well started creating businesses, that was very very standout, a mixed race couple that were running businesses like that in a town like Derby. So again, they sort of set an example of it's other people's problems if they don't accept you, just get on. There's an element of where we just get on with it, and I think that's sort of shown in certainly how myself and my siblings have progressed in life as well. We've overcome a lot of obstacles to get where we are.
Tom Dowse is a remarkable man. He has made a significant contribution to life in Derby, and he is certainly a role model.
A man can come, well, not in him, but quite a few others can come to a land so far away, where in some ways they met with a certain amount of hostility, the cold climate, and for them to stay and stick it out and do what they do, well, anything's possible.